Hi, it's Katrina. Number 8. Alien statues in Jordan. In 1983, some extremely strange statues were discovered during an excavation in the country of Jordan. Not far from the capital of Amman, in the Neolithic settlement called Ain Ghazal, archaeologists discovered buried alien statues. The sculptures were extraordinarily unique because their features were unlike any other previous find in the region. They didn't look like they were modeled after gods or kings. They had wide, alien-like eyes and skinny bodies. They looked exactly like what you'd expect Martians to look like, only there was one even weirder feature that shocked archaeologists to their cores. Many of the statues were double-headed. The sculptures had a single body but sprouted 2 heads. The curious statues were dug out of a trench using a bulldozer. There were about 30 humanoid figurines buried inside the prehistoric village. The village itself thrived for about 2,000 years between around 8,000 and 6,000 BC. It's believed that Ain Ghazal was one of the biggest cities in the Middle East during the Neolithic Age. However, very few pieces of evidence remain to show what the culture was like. One theory is that the region was inhabited by an unknown human civilization that somehow had 2 heads. But the statues may have also been based on real creatures that the ancient humans saw. And if that's true, they could have been in contact with space aliens that had twin heads and wide oval eyes. What do you think these statues were meant to represent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And now for number 7. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Amanda Kruger, Amanda's 2-year-old son, and Steampunk Princess. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. I'm so happy you're here. And if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us. Number 7. Super Acoustics. On the small Mediterranean island of Malta, there is one of the best preserved prehistoric sites in the world. It's called the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, and it's a subterranean necropolis. Archaeological investigations show it was built around 4000 BC, when the islanders of Malta suddenly became obsessed with the ritualization of life and death. This was one of the first great underground crypts built by human hands. It's a vast network of subterranean corridors carved through the limestone of the island. Over the centuries, the islanders continued to expand the hypogeum. They built bigger temples, dug deeper passages, and filled the chambers with corpses. Then, for about 1,500 years, the hypogeum was used as a grand necropolis, the likes of which was never seen again. But by 2,500 BC, it was completely abandoned. Unfortunately, much of it was destroyed in the 1800s with the rise of industrialization. It's been pieced back together, but much of the original structure was ruined. However, deep within the corridors is a place called the Oracle Room. It's an oblong chamber where experts believe most of the death rituals took place. It also appears to have been fashioned using extremely sophisticated technology. The properties of the Oracle Room border on the supernatural. A team of scientists recently investigated the sound qualities of the room. They discovered that whoever built this place did so in a way that utilized acoustics to alter human consciousness. By tuning the human voice to a particular frequency, scientists were able to create an effect not unlike that of being high on hallucinogenic drugs. Sounds echo within the chamber for nearly 10 seconds, allowing those present to physically feel the noise in their bodies. Being exposed to a voice within the chamber for long enough creates a sensation of relaxation. And if exposure to the sound continues, it can result in an out-of-body experience. Dr. Paolo De Bertolis was one of the scientists involved in the study from the Clinical Neurophysiology Unit at the University of Trieste. Individuals who partook in the study said they were able to reproduce the same states of consciousness as with drugs and chemical substances. Somehow, the Neolithic builders understood how to change the human mind using nothing but sound. So, what do you think? Could this have something to do with the evolution of the human mind? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 6. The fake emperor. For 300 years, historians and archaeologists believed Emperor Sponsian was nothing but a myth. But in 1713, a small stash of strange gold coins was discovered in Transylvania. The coins proved a mystery to archaeologists. They'd never heard of Emperor Sponsian, whose face was stamped on the gold coins. And as the years went by, the coins were dismissed as fake. It was assumed that somebody forged the coins to trick researchers. Now that 3 centuries have passed, though, scientists scientists from the University of Glasgow have changed the history of the coins. Modern technology has proved that not only are they real, but that Emperor Sponsian was a living, breathing historical figure. Professor Paul Pearson, the man who led the recent investigation into the coins, says it all started during lockdown in 2020. Paul wanted to write about the viral pandemic of 248 AD, which helped lead to the collapse of the Roman Empire. The pandemic that struck Rome led to an economic decline, widespread famine, political instability, and war. It was while Paul conducted research for his story that he came across the coins from Transylvania. He was surprised to learn that every scientist who looked at them declared them fakes. Apparently, every specialist since 1860 claimed that the gold Sponsian coins weren't real. The issue with the coins has always been that they look fake. They don't match the high standard of quality seen with most gold coins minted in Rome 2,000 years ago. Nonetheless, Paul's team was able to confirm the coins as being minted in the 3rd century AD. The team also determined that they were likely minted in the province of Dacia by jewelers rather than official Roman coin makers. Sponsian wasn't the legitimate ruler of the Roman Empire. Paul and his colleagues believe Sponsian was a local military officer in the Roman province of Dacia during the plague. When the province was cut off from the rest of Rome, Sponsian proclaimed himself emperor to maintain civil order. Then the flow of money from Rome stopped abruptly, so Sponsian had coins minted locally with his face on them. He was almost definitely a real person who had control of his own corner of the empire, but nothing else is known about him. Today, only 4 coins exist with his face on them, and that means the coins that everyone thought were fake for 300 years are now some of the most valuable Roman coins in the world. Any coin collectors out there? Let me know in the comments! Number 5. The Forgotten Expeditions. Contrary to popular belief, Christopher Columbus didn't prove that the Earth is round. Educated folk in the Middle Ages already knew the Earth was spherical. Christopher Columbus never once worried that his ships would fall off the edge of the sea and float off into the vacuum of space. Columbus figured he'd go around the world until he got to Asia, but the one thing he hadn't accounted for was the massive continent in the middle of the ocean between Europe and Asia. He thought he landed in India, but he really landed in North America. What the history books don't teach us is that Columbus wasn't the first to stumble upon North America. Leif Erikson and his Viking comrades reached North America 500 years earlier than Columbus, around 1000 AD. The Vikings called it Vinland, and they left behind irrefutable proof of their adventures. Archaeologists in Canada found the remains of a Viking settlement in the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's believed that the settlement on the island of Newfoundland wasn't the only one. Many academics and historians agree that the Vikings likely had a strong presence in North America. There even seems to be evidence that they landed near Boston as well. Amazingly, the Vikings could have undiscovered settlements scattered all along the eastern coast of North America. Up until very recently, Viking explorers in America before Columbus were a laughable idea. It was only around 1960 when proof was uncovered in Newfoundland that established history was changed. Archaeologists laughed at the idea until suddenly there was evidence on the table. It's a great example of how history can change in the blink of an eye. But what if there was somebody who reached North America even before the Vikings? It's believed the Egyptians may have also arrived somewhere on the east coast. Around the year 600 BC, Egyptian and Phoenician sailors teamed up to go on a grand expedition. They traveled west through the Mediterranean, down the coast of Africa, and ultimately back to the Red Sea. It was an incredible feat that was recorded in plenty of ancient texts, so scientists know it happened. While the Egyptians didn't mention any journey to the New World, it's still a possibility. Researchers have found evidence of cocaine in ancient mummies, which came from South America 2,500 years ago. Scientists have even found trace amounts of nicotine in ancient Egyptian mummies, derived from the North American tobacco plant. Evidence shows a potential trading link between the Egyptian pharaohs and the tribes of North America. Number 4. Rethinking Humanity. A shocking discovery in a remote part of Indonesia has scholars contemplating the history of humanity. In 2014, archaeologist Maxime Albert announced the discovery of what might be the oldest cave paintings in the world. The works of art are located within a deep, dark, and strangely mystical cave. The cave is situated in the jungle of Sulawesi, one of Indonesia's most populated islands. It's a place where the monkeys still live in the trees, runways, where the sounds of civilization give way to the chirping of insects and the calls of birds. Within the cavern, Albert and his colleagues dated strange wall paintings at 35,400 years old. If the date is correct, the pictures are the oldest examples of figurative art on the planet. The artwork here is significantly older than the most ancient examples in France and Spain. But who were these first artists? That's the big question that has scientists re-evaluating the history of humanity. The agreed-upon fact by most scientists is that Homo sapiens evolved in Africa around 200,000 years ago. They look just like we do today, and they even had the same brains, but they lacked intellect and creativity. They messed around with making tools, but so had the apes before them for millions of years. Nothing truly set them apart from their monkey cousins until they started to use their imagination. It wasn't until Homo sapiens became artistic, took an interest in spirits, and created gods that they took a huge step forward. This was the creation of higher consciousness. According to Benjamin Smith, an expert in rock art from the University of Western Australia, these cave paintings mark a cognitive shift in the human mind. For the first time, people had enough creativity to visually represent things in crude paintings. It was the conception of abstract thinking. Number 3. Choco Canyon runways. If you're interested in ancient ruins but don't want to leave the United States, Choco Canyon is the place for you. It's a fantastic archaeological site where you can see the stars almost as clearly as you could 1,000 years ago. It was this beautiful view of the heavens that must have fascinated the Anasazi when they flourished in the Choco Canyon between 850 and 1250 AD. The Anasazi built stone houses here, aligning them with the cardinal directions of the compass and the stars. But after 400 years of living in the canyon, watching the cosmos, the Anasazi suddenly vanished. They didn't leave behind any mass graveyards, and they certainly didn't leave any evidence of a great migration. They simply disappeared into thin air, almost as if they were all beamed to another world. In the 1970s, NASA took an unusual interest in the Choco Canyon. Using multispectral scanning technology, NASA scientists discovered sophisticated roadways used by the Anasazi. Invisible to the naked eye, but detectable using advanced machines, these roadways were huge. They were built almost like airport runways, spread all throughout the canyon. But why would an ancient civilization like the Anasazi need access to roads that were big enough to land jumbo jets on? It's doubtful that the Anasazi had developed space travel. They built their homes from stone and mud, so they weren't exactly messing with hyperdrive technology. But there are many who think they may have built the runways for somebody else. It could be that the Anasazi built huge roads where intergalactic visitors were able to land their spaceships. It's a crazy idea, but it could explain how the Anasazi vanished without a trace, especially if you love science fiction. Number 2. The Pingyan giant footprint. You don't have to look far in ancient mythologies to find stories of giants. According to the Greeks, the early Christians, and even the Aztecs, the world was ruled by giants in the days before the Great Flood. These tales have been passed down from generation to generation, but there hasn't been much evidence to back up the tales. The only pieces of proof that spring up always seem to disappear, almost as if scientists don't want the public to know that giants really did exist. One of the more recent discoveries is a massive footprint embedded in stone. The footprint was found by a group of locals in the Chinese province of Guizhou in August 2016. They photographed a massive footprint that appeared to be over 3 times bigger than the average human foot. It has all the same features as a human foot, with clear indentations of all 5 toes, only it was left by someone or something that must have stood over 10 to 12 feet tall. It's now known as the Pingyan giant footprint, named after the small village where it was found. Normally, this kind of discovery would flip the scientific community on its head. After all, it's a perfectly preserved human footprint that must have belonged to a real giant, but the scientific community has been dead silent. Although the footprint does seem to exist, experts won't comment on it. Even Snopes, the fact-finding website that's disproved countless hoaxes, can't state whether it's real or not. The footprint could be true physical evidence of a massive race that ruled the globe in prehistory, but for some reason, the experts refuse to recognize the print's significance. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Number 1. Peopling the Americas. For decades, scientists have agreed that ancient Siberians were the only ancestors of Native Americans. However, new discoveries are challenging the old beliefs. Molecular anthropologist Yu Chun Li from the Chinese Academy of Sciences says the ancestry of Native Americans is far more complicated than previously thought. Researchers compared mitochondrial DNA from modern humans in the Americas to DNA from ancient people across Eurasia. They were able to trace the maternal ancestry of North American indigenous people to ancient coastal groups in China and Japan. Researchers even discovered evidence of two different migration events. First, a group of people from coastal China traveled to the Americas around 26,000 years ago. Then another one migrated as recently as 11,500 years ago. And what's interesting is that the more recent group that traveled to North America also traveled to Japan. So what does all this mean, and how does it change history? Scientists have essentially confirmed that Native Americans all came from a group of early humans in eastern China. They also confirmed that the same people went to Japan. That means the first humans in the US were the same as the first humans in Japan, both from a group fleeing the Ice Age in China. Thanks for watching! Which of these amazing discoveries did you find the most interesting? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and come back soon. Bye!